Thank you so much, Manas. That was very crisp as always. Thank you so much for that. And again, a formal welcome to all my dear panelists. I think a few of us have interacted before especially through the lockdown, across roundtables and other such conferences. Welcome again. So what I'll do is, we've shared the set of questions with each of you. I will start with the basic questions first in terms of looking at the smart healthcare and your individual slash company's outlook on that. And maybe I can start with Gerd. Gerd, what do you think are the fundamental objectives and focus areas that are driving innovation in the overall MedTech space, especially within your organization, keeping sustainability as the centerpiece?
Mhm. Well, let me first start with our vision or purpose of the company, which we newly defined recently. You may have heard about a major acquisition which took place last year. We acquired Varian for cancer therapy, and as a combined team of the Siemens Healthineers and Varian, we said we will also probably have to relook at our mission, vision, values, all these kind of topics. And our new mission vision is we pioneer breakthroughs in healthcare for everyone, everywhere. And what is interesting, if you look at for everyone, everywhere, I mean, in the past, I would say since our beginning in 18 something, we have already been pioneering breakthroughs in healthcare. But I wouldn't necessarily say that it was for everyone and everywhere. So this is something new where we say, okay, the focus for us are 8 billion people on the globe. And if you keep this in mind, you can also easily realize that sustainability plays a major role if you really address the complete globe. And talking about innovation, when we look at innovation, our innovation is always focused on the patient. So that means we drive so-called patient-centered innovation to ensure better outcomes and experiences. And for that, we also feel that we are uniquely positioned. If you look at the topics that we are driving in the company, there are 3 major areas. This is the patient twinning as one area, and it's also, let's say, our 3 unique capabilities: patient twinning, the second one, precision therapy, and the third one, digital. Patient twinning we do for personalization of diagnosis. Also, we can use it for therapy selection, monitoring, aftercare, and managing health. In principle, the whole continuum from the diagnosis till somebody has recovered. Talking about precision therapy, there we use intelligent and image-guided treatments for the most threatening diseases, cancer and other things. And well, this is also something which, of course, both the base patient twinning as well as the precision therapy, they use digitalization, data, and AI. So we are leveraging digital and with data and AI to advance the provider's operations with tech-enabled and enterprise services. And of course, also for our own solutions where we work on to make them able that they have the latest technology and can also support the medical doctors in their decision making. So those are, let's say, the 3 areas we work on: patient twinning, precision therapy, and digitalization.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Gerd. That was very insightful. I've made a note and I will come back to you on at least one of those areas as we move forward. Shaosheng, welcome. I hope I am getting your name right. If not, happy to stand corrected. Welcome to the panel. And I would like to ask you a similar question. And you are almost the only person who is formally the head of sustainability here. And so it'll be very interesting for us to understand, 2, 3 things, right? Maybe what we can start with is, under the mandate of sustainability across different devices and applications, what kind of capabilities are you looking to build? And how do you enhance these MedTech capabilities? So maybe we can start from there, and as we progress, we will build on that.
Yeah, sure. Let me start with talking about the WSA as a company. I don't think many people know because it's a new company, a new name, at least merged from 2 companies 3 years ago. So WS Audiology is a global leader in the hearing aid industry. We help millions of people regain and benefit from the miracle of hearing by designing and manufacturing innovative hearing aid devices and solutions. At WSA, sustainability is not only about environment, it is also about maximizing our positive social impact. And we are guided by our 5 sustainability goals, which are very well embedded into the overall corporate strategy. So if you ask me what is our sustainability strategy and what is our business strategy, how they link with each other, I will tell you that we have only one strategy. That is a integrated strategy. And our 5 sustainability goals, they are about awareness, accessibility, affordability, diversity and inclusion, and the environment. And in terms of capability building, we build our capability in-house to drive us to reach these 5 goals. Let me maybe elaborate a bit on these 5 goals and also touch upon the other question, how we drive innovation through the focus on sustainability. So there is a sort of crisis coming on our way about hearing. According to the WHO forecast, there will be many more people who will lose hearing in the very near future. And as of today, 1.6 billion people have hearing loss worldwide. 430 million people with disabling hearing loss, but only 15 to 20% of them are using hearing aids. There are many reasons why they are not using hearing aids, and we believe that through our first 3 goals, raising awareness, increasing accessibility, and make the hearing aids more affordable, we can tackle some of the problems and bring the wonderful sound for all. And that is how we create positive impact to the society, and that is why it is a sustainability goal as well. Yeah.
Go on, Sharshan, if you had something more to say. Yeah, please.
I would like to elaborate on one of them, right? The awareness part, how we drive, how this goal of awareness drive innovation. So let me explain why awareness is important. There is a stigma around wearing hearing aids. People associate hearing aids with senior inactive lifestyle. And in many people's mind, hearing aids are still this bulky badge thing that looks ugly on your ear. But through product and technology innovation, we can help people to break this stigma. At WS Audiology, we provide hearing aids with cool looking, and they support very active lifestyle. You can wear the hearing aids when you do exercises. And we continue to innovate to bring hearing solution to more people. And then we have 2 more sustainability goals that also drive innovation. The 4th one is diversity and inclusion. We want to bring wonderful sound for all. All means, no matter of age, race, gender, culture, and language, we want to support people. An inclusive design of hearing aids is important for us. And here are 3 examples how we ensure the inclusive design. First, we conduct clinical trial with people with diverse backgrounds. Second, we assess user data and confirm that our hearing aids are used equally efficiently by men and women. So there's not this issue that some other may encounter that, because the R&D department even in WSA nowadays, it is dominated by male. There might be a risk that we develop and design something by men for men. That's the risk which we evaluated and confirmed that in WSology, that is not the case. Our devices are equally used by men and women. And then the third example here is that we realize our fitting software, this software for fitting hearing aids, is developed based on Western languages, and people who speak tonal language, such as Chinese, might not fit perfectly into the software. So that creates a problem. And to make our hearing aids inclusive for people who speak tonal language, we developed an AI solution to support those users to continuously improve the performance of their hearing aids after fitting. So these are the examples how a sustainability-related topic drive innovation, and that has been ongoing even before we established the sustainability strategy a year ago. But that is embedded in the business strategy, in the business purpose to bring wonderful sound to all.
Got it.
And
very interesting.
Yes, I talk too much. Maybe.
No, perfect. Yes. No, this is a very, very good. I really like how, the concept of inclusion and including diversity is almost intertwined with the sustainability goals. So really, really good, Xiaojun. And we'll pick up on some of that.
Yeah.
So if I move on, Knut, I'll come to you. And what we wanted to quickly discuss is, we've always had sustainability, but post-COVID, there's definitely a more serious push towards it. And do you believe that this emerging trend has actually transformed some of the end goals of your organization in terms of innovation, or is it just status quo and we're doing a little bit newer things, etc.? So what is your opinion on that, Knut?
Good, interesting question. Of course, give me also a chance about the overall story of this company, their background in sustainability. So this is a company, is an exciting model where we have a family-owned company with a 75 years history. And we talk about where this equipment is used in the order of billion applications. So when you optimize this equipment to serve the patient and the human being and being efficient there, you have a tremendous impact over the long term. So sustainability in a family-owned company thinking about generations is in their DNA. They care about the patient, their employees, and their environment. So these are three circles of main influence, and you have to look about all of this when you think about generations. So our core is improving surgical outcome in a surgical theater and everything beyond in sphere. So we talk about instruments, devices, and all the software around it, and smart services and using the data. We will come maybe later to this. And we are in the lucky position about minimal invasive surgery. There is an impact, maybe a small correlation to COVID we will see. Minimal invasive surgery is we are very lucky. It's optimizing the best practice in surgical procedures, helping our first customers, the doctors, to serve the patient in the best way, to, for example, have first the best medical outcome. So this is whatever we discuss, this is number one. And then the second, of course, sustainability and easily in combination. And here we see when you apply this, you can shorten the stay of patients in the hospital. So when you go from weeks to days, this has a huge impact. So you can serve with the same amount of money, more patient, and the load to the local ecological footprint is smaller. So we are in a lucky position, and to make this whole circus around it as efficient as possible to serve the patient at the end. This is the history, and this is going forward. This is fundamentally not changed by COVID. What you're interested in is definitely to be in a crowded place like a hospital. You like to stay there as short as possible. In general, when you think about infection and so on, this is the best thing you can do, is my experience. So, and you reduce by this procedures ideally also when it's best practice complication. You use, as I said, the resources, and you can provide also more economic solutions like in the outpatient solutions. So not staying in the hospital, you go there and can go home. So we have this as a core and go ahead with it. So, of course, we take also this in some activities since many, many years, like the case like the United Nations Global Compact. We are part of this 2004, this is one of it. And we always report there, and we support this kind of activities on the bigger scale. So COVID changed the work life, changed the life of our patient. And in our innovation, definitely when we see a bigger scope, how we innovate and cooperate together, this has certainly changed. And like everywhere in the industry, more people work from home. To the patient, we can enable to stay shorter in hospitals, for example, to be not exposed to this critical environment from this perspective. So this is in the nutshell from my side.
Excellent, Kunal. Thank you for that brilliant overview. David, as I move to you, one of the things I would like to understand is, especially in your experience, how has sustainability actually expedited the MedTech product journey? And how has it transformed not just one of the firms, but players across the value chain in your experience?
Thank you, Siddhant. It's a wonderful question, and it's one of the most, let's say, core questions that we always ask ourselves. Sustainability in general improves the quality of life and protects our ecosystem for future generations, and we all believe in this. In the manufacturing world, sustainability, taking into account everything from manufacturing to logistics to customer service, it's a holistic approach. We need to see it from end to end. For example, in on the expedition that the expedite that has happened in the product development, the way products were designed has changed enormously. In older times, it used to be mostly a feature-driven or a value-driven, right? Now they are looking at an end-to-end system. They are even the engineers are even considering for example, the usability of the product, which is very important, or the reusability of the product after end of life, right? So it's very important that we see these things. In manufacturing, we used to be, procure the best available product at cheapest cost all times, but now it has been moved more towards, first of all, trying to make a digital twin of the product, see if it's going to work or not, and try to, for example, Chaushin was mentioning that they were doing extensive exercises whether a product would work or not before producing it even, right? So that actually eliminates, let's say, the wastage of products that may be produced and later on you cannot sell for A, B, C reasons. So that's one of the really nice practices that are happening in there. And in manufacturing especially, even the production lines are being digitized in a digital way to see what sensors can be used, how we can identify default products, how early we can eliminate, let's say, workflow problems, all of these things that are happening in manufacturing sector, manufacturing of the product. And when you're looking at sales and marketing, there is a huge leap there. We see all the sales and marketing tactics being changed from paper to digital formats, for example. There is a huge advantage there. We see organizations investing into having single source of truth, whether it's their product portfolio, whether it's their marketing materials, or even looking at a customer in using CRMs to have one single view of customers, right? So that's also happening. It's really wonderful to see that. And beyond this, at the end of the customer journey, we look at customer service. It's very important that this stage of the customer is heavily relied upon, because that's where we develop, let's say, loyalty towards the customers, and companies are proactively moving towards providing service to their capital equipment by already engaging with them and prior to end of life of the product, so that they can procure the product back, they can reuse the product or recycle the product to do something else, or even building remote capabilities compared to old times. Old times, someone has to go to the location, but now we are able to do all of these things remotely. So in general, the impact has been holistic. So the product life cycle from concept development, material selection, designing, engineering to manufacturing, packaging, transporting, sales, marketing until end of life. So there is a huge change that has been in MedTech industry over the years, and this has been impacting each and every one from the suppliers at the value chain, at the very beginning of the value chain, suppliers giving the raw materials till the end, not only the HCPs who are using the products, but the consumers who are the patients. They are getting the power now with these additional digital enabled tools, which gives them more transparency on how they are being treated and how they are recovering. So this is my take on the whole.
Excellent, David. That was very clear. Carly, coming to you, wanted to understand one fundamental thing, right? So there's a lot of talk on sustainability, and you've been across multiple firms, Greenway and Nuance, and right now Zealous. Do you really think that the mandate of sustainability is transforming the core offerings, or are there other areas that it is transforming? Like David said, there are across the value chain things are being changed. Xiaojun spoke about different layers. But at the core offering level, at the core product level, are there any changes?
Yeah, certainly. So first of all, thanks for having me. It's great to be here with all our esteemed peers and colleagues here. And thanks for Zinnov for hosting it. Absolutely. If you look at simple things from a product standpoint, all the way from how servers are being managed, from CPUs are managed, all that is fundamentally changing, right? So if you don't have to manage your servers, you're going to the cloud. Even within the cloud, you're optimizing the footprint of your products. There's one example, by the way, at Nuance, we almost did a decade ago, where the speech recognition software was taking more capacity than it's needed on the server. So we actually did an initiative out of Austria to tackle that. And if you think about just that math alone, it was taking one processor power to process speech. We cut that down to a third. Now, if you think about how many speech devices are being used in the world today that form the base of that technology, so that means that we've been able to reduce a third of all the horsepower that is required to process speech today in the world, of at least in the ecosystem that technology existed. And that technology formed the basis for Apple, for Amazon, for Nuance, because that's ubiquitous in terms of how that technology was the core of everything. So from a sustainability standpoint, we should feel proud that we've been able to reduce the footprint of servers by a third, and knowing that there are about 10,000 servers just in the North Carolina data center for one of the big providers supporting speech. That means that it would have taken 30,000 servers instead of 10,000 servers to be able to do same exact thing. So that's one solid example. The other examples are, even today, as we talk about sustainability, when we, instead of paper versus electronic communication versus opt-in versus opt-out, features and things like that, in the past, you used to have to opt into electronic communications. Now it's an opt-in automatically into electronic communications, and then you have to opt out of it to get the paper communication. So, we process about 50 million pieces of paper at Zealous each year, and that is drastically reducing now to electronic cards and electronic payments and things like that. Obviously the what is happening in the ecosystem right now, especially with the macro picture of the war, the COVID, and the economy in general, the supply chain disruption in general, that is forcing us to be obviously more sustainable just in general and just in the ecosystem alone. But then that's also becomes a muscle that we go forward. So product area, servers, hosting, the printing, electronic communication, even telehealth. Telehealth has been a big, we want to adopt more telehealth so that you don't have to drive, and that creates less, obviously, carbon footprint, and everything else that comes with it. So there's certain aspects of it that have happened organically. There are certain aspects of it that are happening because of the core mandate of sustainability.
Interesting. Kali, I really like the compute example because not too many people think about, how much energy goes in actually computing. So great. I really like that. And I've noted it. We might build on that in some time. What I'll do is I'll move to my next section. And this is specifically on the overall R&D that we do and the engineering that we do on products and services. And again, I'll start with Gerd again. Gerd, you've been managing R&D for close to 3 decades now across different regions. What do you believe and what do you think is the cornerstone for successful design, dev, and activation of many of these new sustainable use cases or sustainability use cases in MedTech devices?
The cornerstone from my point of view is relatively simple. It's the digital twin.
Interesting.
In what will remain important in the way it was in the past is the domain competence, of course, and also the competence when I look at software R&D about the craftsmanship in software, all these kind of topics. But what becomes more and more important, and I think one of my co-panelists already mentioned it as well, is the concept of the digital twin, not only for the individual, but also for the modalities that we are developing. The thing is, if you have a digital twin of, let's say, a modality, you can operate it in a virtual environment. You can show it to the customer. You can also check out the manufacturability. You can also have a digital twin, the factory itself. And with all this kind of simulations, you can optimize it for simulation. So when we talk about a digital twin, we have to differentiate between the digital twin of the product, the digital twin of the process, so the manufacturing and the manufacturing environment. And the fourth dimension is the digital twin of the patient or an individual. And with this, in principle, we can optimize the development. We can ensure that we really develop for the customer what he really requires, because before we even produce a product, we can give him a complete impression how to operate it, combine, for example, the design process with virtual reality, and those are technology we are working on. You can ensure that you have the optimized products considering principles of sustainability and what the customer really wants and needs. And let me also add one aspect. If you look at the long-term vision, and you also have a question on future of MedTech. Maybe I should talk about this. What is the impact of a digital twin of an individual on MedTech per se? And I will talk about that in our next section.
Interesting. Good. I can't resist but ask you this question, especially on the digital twin aspect. And we've and you know this, right? We've spoken about this before. But if you see, and for example, we spoke to the CTO of ANSYS, and we've spoken to the digital head of IQVIA, the CRO company, and we have also Raj is here from L&TTS. Almost everyone seems to be working on some way or form of this digital twin, especially in the healthcare context. Now, in your opinion, Gerd, where are the top 1 or 2 areas where we still need to improve a lot, or where each of these players are contributing from their side? So, for example, ANSYS, have they completely built a good simulation for, say, a tissue, or what is Siemens working on which area? So, who is doing what is not completely clear to me. So, if you could just spend a minute or two on that in terms of who's contributing.
It also has to do with the complexity of the human body. Even today, we haven't fully understand how the body works, what is the impact or how the process of thinking works. I know that there are companies working on the idea to have a formula where you could describe how thinking works and then use this for computing algorithms. I think it's still a long way to go. I mean, what from my point of view, what made me pretty much optimistic was the way how mankind was able to find vaccines for COVID-19. Yeah, because that was in record speed within 1 year. And that also requires the understanding of the human body and of the disease, how it works and all these kind of things. But a colleague of mine, and I mean, I'm a software guy, I'm not an expert in biology or medical topics, but a colleague of mine, he once said to me that most probably we have understood how the human body works for less than 30%. Yeah, so that basically means there is still 70% that needs to be understood. And for a perfect simulation of a digital twin of an individual, you would have to understand it, because otherwise you can't model it.
Interesting.
Where we work on at the moment are parts of the body. For example, I mean, we have a digital twin of a heart. And with this, giving the individual conditions of a person, you could simulate and you could maybe forecast how likely it is that this person will get into some problems with his heart if he doesn't change his lifestyle or something like that. Yeah. But we are talking about, I mean, heart is probably a very, very important organ, and we won't argue about that, but it's only a small part of the overall body.
Right.
And I think it's really, let's say, it will take many, many years. There are also colleagues who even tell me they don't believe that in 50 years even we will be
it's even possible. Okay. So what you're saying, the magnitude of the problem is so large, even if we have different value chain players and big ones working on it, it's still going to take a long time for us to get it right.
Depends on what you call a long time. And if you look at how things are developing, I mean, just turn back the clock 10 years. And then think about how the world looked like 10 or maybe 15 years ago when it comes to mobile phones.
Right.
And then if you would give everybody today a mobile phone from 15 years back, the world would change completely, because basically today we could all have, let's say, the conference that we have at the moment with our mobile phone. When we can do any bank transactions, we can book flights. You use it as a camera. You don't use it anymore as a mode, or the maybe less than 10% of the usage of a mobile phone today is what you used a mobile phone in the past for.
Right.
And if you see how technology evolved, how the miniaturization enabled this. Yeah, if you would have told this somebody 10, 15 years ago, they would have said this is impossible. And if I look at it, if we continue in the technology development at that speed, I can imagine 15, 20, maybe 25 years, it should be possible.
Perfect. That's a very good insight, Gerd, and because that's an area where a lot of people that I've spoken to are have very limited visibility. So thank you for answering that. Xiaojun, I will move to you, and you operate in a very interesting space, right? And hearing aids, and it is one thing to have hearing aids, but at the same time, I'm sure you are also competing with some of the leading edge consumer electronic phones, right? Like the device that I really wear here. And one of the things that we have noticed is that instead of these devices becoming simpler, they're becoming a lot more complex. There's more electronics. There is more, difficult to find material. And doesn't that take away from a device or a product becoming more sustainable? Aren't we just, moving it backwards? So, in your mind, how do you think sustainability and this complexity can coexist?
Exactly. The more complex the device, the more complex is the supply chain. And therefore, actually, in contrary to what you say, therefore, sustainability must remain in force to mitigate the risk of disruption in the supply chain, such as component and material shortage. And Kali Sharam was mentioning about the challenge of the supply chain, and sustainability is the solution. I fully agree with that. And two examples how sustainability can help. First of all, by implementing the circular economy principles, a company keeps the material in the loop of usage for as long as possible. So you don't need, to a less extent, you would need new natural resources, new components, new materials going into your production flow to keep the material in the loop by implementing circular economy. And the second example is by implementing climate risk assessment. A company prepare for possible extreme weathers that might disrupt supply chain. There are many other examples where sustainability is used as a framework to mitigate these risks and supporting the fact that the device is becoming more and more complex. And in wake of the climate crisis, many industries are moving towards electronified. And I think MedTech as an industry should rethink how to compete resources with those industries, automobile, electronic cars, renewable energy, electricity storage, huge batteries. And as you say, consumer goods like Apple and other electronic companies, they are also playing in this area where we compete for the same resources. MedTech, is it in the right position to compete for that? That is a question, and we should be prepared for any of the disruption in the supply chain.
Interesting. Thank you, Shojin. Knut, I'll come to you. And what I'd like to understand is, we are speaking about in the same vein of thinking about resources and how they are getting consumed. In your mind, what should be the prime focus areas to ensure optimal deployment of these sustainable of resources and ensuring sustainability in the MedTech context?
Of course, this is a very broad domain. So let's focus, for example, in one product class. Definitely, you have to address everything. I think all small step counts, and the solution is at the sum of the small steps. But when we see what we can address, for example, in our instruments or in devices in the surgical theater, when you develop them, you can be more efficient in engineering. You can apply, and you have to, there are some further reasons to do so, to be more efficient in engineering. But when you see the ecologic footprint and now as a subset, the CO2 footprint, the material, the raw material has the biggest impact. So and then to make this, to have the framework and the regulation framework, to have this really with a really qualified CO2 footprint, for example, from the suppliers, and the suppliers moving in this direction, the big players, Bayer and so on, they are moving in this direction to give their material with this kind of this kilogram of this material has this certain CO2 footprint. So for example, it's just one, it's much more than CO2, ecologic, and we heard also society impact. So this is something, yet this has to be addressed, and we have to give the regulation framework to this. So you can influence by the design a lot, keep it simple, be lean in design, have innovative ideas that are really bringing in our domain the patient ahead. At the same time, as described by minimal invasive surgery, be more efficient to run a hospital, for example, and serve more patients with the same amount of resources. So this is something, but definitely when you look at the whole ecologic footprint, some is the materials and their origin and their transport ways and so on and so forth. So there's something we can address. And so this has to be part of engineering and considered when we select and design, and you have to make it part of the processes. So interesting. In our development process, we have it as an integral part of the development process for these medical devices.
Interesting note. And just one quick follow-up, right? Because just speaking from experience of a core engineer doing R&D, not always do you think of material as the first thing. I mean, you think about material as in let's do aluminum or let's do ABC, but is there some kind of engineer level training an update that you're providing, like say a handbook which says that these are the materials and so is more sustainable than the other, and you should prioritize certain materials over the other. Just thinking about some best practices to how engineers can be updated on what is sustainable and not from a material perspective.
Yeah, we have there, of course, also a hierarchy of importance. So when you see about the biocompatibility and how carcinogenic it is and how
interesting.
This is number one. This three elements number one. So when you can reprocess a product 1,000 times in the field, it comes with a much smaller footprint. So the durability influenced by this, and then the people are educated to address this for the patient interest. And then by this, you have to address further. And there we have to develop us. And we do.
Interesting. Thank you for that. David, what I would like to, ask you and understand is, are there any unique engineering level strategies that need to be deployed, or in your experience, you have deployed in your organization or previous organizations to, even enable the ecosystem and end users to be a lot more sustainable?
Thank you for the question. Well, I'll take one step back and I'll talk about how our customers are seeing this, right? So our customers are increasingly requesting information on chemical components and recyclability of products and packaging. And this we all know. It's not only as a manufacturer, but my end customer is requesting this. And on top of that, my company's focus on products is actually assisting our customers in reaching their sustainability goals. It's not only our sustainability goals, it's an ecosystem we are talking about even as organizations. So we have to support them. And this we try to bring back as unique engineering and research development strategy back to, and I believe this has to be a standard that has to be in every R&D and engineering, that we start looking at our customer base and see what kind of materials they are requesting for, what kind of information, so that as mentioned, in order to not put stress on the supply chain, maybe the industry, and even within MedTech industry, depending on what kind of indications we are working on, whether it's minimally invasive solutions or not, the materials will change. And that can be brought back to our engineering. As you mentioned earlier, we can come up with a framework saying these are the materials and these are the producers that we have, materials that we have, and we can use doing the priority management of our customers and the product. And having a strong business process management is another thing. It's not only that, beyond that, by bringing value throughout the ecosystem, we need to look at opportunities where we can generate data and harness the capabilities of big data to learn from our product, so that we retroactively make better products for future. So that's very important. And I think in this in the strategy, we need to always look into different dimensions. And one of the dimension is our customers. Another dimension is the supply chain. The third dimension is the data, and trying to make our products better for all our end users.
Got it, David. Thank you for that. Kali, moving to you, a couple of things I want to understand, right? One is we spoke about, using the right material, which is sustainable. Something Nuth said, spoke about how you can use material that can, be continuously used. Shaojun spoke about circular economy within the product ecosystem. The final thing that I want to understand from you is just this, different ways and means that recycling can happen. And right now there are new ways where, they are able to recycle material that earlier was not thought possible, right? So that is one. So one, if you could throw some light there. The second one, and you could answer it simultaneously, is if you coming from Zealous and before that at Greenway, right? Are there controls and mechanisms that you put in to ensure that there are, maybe you favor more companies that are more sustainable while you're doing your processing for their billing or of their initiatives, of their business, right? So are there ways that you're incentivizing them or demeriting them in some way? So both of these I would really like to understand from you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So the pure way of paper recycling and how we use paper and how we recycle the paper to be able to be reused within, whether it's envelopes or paper or checks or even ID cards. We print ID cards, we print all of that stuff. All of that has evolved to a point where we are not offloading, we're not sending, we're not. So, for example, in the past, there used to be a container in the back of our production facility that just used to take this away, and we didn't know what used to happen. Now, this container is actually is dedicated to our recycling facility. The recycling company partner takes it, recycles it, and then shows us how it's recycled. And in some cases, it actually, the material comes back to us. So we are actually able to sustain and save more. Not only, it's not a financial argument anymore, obviously, as everybody's, becoming more sustainable and things like that. That alone has changed to, hey, the paper a roll of paper that we buy is in the millions of millions of pages that you can print out of it. So even saving one roll of that, and right now we're able to save more than that just by doing that recycling aspect of it. And I think that's one. And within that, yes, the partnerships have evolved to a point where we are now partnering with, are you being sustainable? Are you being recycling? Are you enabling, these aspects of it? And of course, when we approach providers, and we never used to use the argument of, hey, why print a paper check from a sustainability standpoint, but now we can. Now we are, right? So it not only saves a stamp, but it saves the paper. And why not go electronic? Electronic is easier, is cheaper, and is better, and is secure for most part. And just to talk about innovation in that area. So this is very future looking for us, but one of the areas that we have an issue with is the electronic communication. How secure is it? Is it going to email? And how is it secure? So we, Zealous, are doing actually a blockchain innovation project as a proof of concept to say, can I do a payment from me to a provider using blockchain that is more secure than sending an email and because today the issue is our clients require us to make sure that when we send something electronic, we track how it's opened, when it's opened, has it been accessed, and things like that. We cannot control how we don't know whether an email is opened, whether it went to the junk mail or things like that. But in a blockchain scenario, we can. When we send when is it open, when is it accessed, how is it accessed, and all of that stuff. So imagine, if you will, that, again, my goal or my hope is that, we change all these electronic payments that we're sending through paper and checks through a blockchain payment scenario. And so right now, I just want to do one handshake between one payer and one provider to on a blockchain to see if we can actually send a secure payment and make this sustainable. So
that's very interesting. Yeah. Excellent. A really good point there, Kali. Because one of the things that we've been talking about is how blockchain is going to become a lot more relevant whenever we think of sustainability. And what you mentioned is a really, really prime use case that we are also tracking. So thank you so much for that, Kali. Raj, coming to you, you're almost the only person who has, a very wide perspective. You're able to work with, companies from different parts of the value chain in MedTech. And in many cases, you're also able to work with companies, not just in MedTech, but in other technology spheres as well. So in your opinion, how have you been able to help companies, and maybe we can stick to healthcare, right? Healthcare and MedTech. How have you or L&T's offerings been able to help companies meet their sustainability goals?
Thanks, Siddhant. So, again, a very broad question, right? And a lot of the panelists touched upon the kind of work that we do for some of our customers. So, let me just step back and say, what we have done as an organization towards the sustainability objectives itself, right? So, as an organization, we have picked on 6 big bets where we are going to channelize all of our investment dollars and energy and all of that. 6 of them, one is electrification, the whole electrification of transportation and so on and so forth. But the others are AI, 5G, sustainability, Industry 4.0, and MedTech, if you will, right? So if you look at it, the 4 of those that I spoke about has a bearing in MedTech itself. And when I say investments, we are spending money on building IP, solutions, developing talent, labs, and so on and so forth. So, for example, we are probably the only supplier in India who has a wet lab where we can do a live blood testing, right? And we work with many of these customers using these capabilities to, do new product development, like, let's say, a smart inhaler, connected medical, device, or software as a medical device. And, you learn everything, something new every day. Somebody spoke about a digital twin of a human body or a particular, organ, right? So a software as a medical device, a lot of it focuses on these peripheral symptoms and, cues, if you will. Then again, quite a lot of work on connected healthcare, telehealth, telesurgery, 3D printing, remote patient monitoring, and so on and so forth, across the value chain, if you will.
Okay, excellent, Raj. So what I'll do is I will move on to my next section, which is mainly on the future of MedTech, especially from a context of sustainability. And Gert, again, maybe I'll start with you again. So one of the things that we have noticed is, and in fact, you also mentioned, and we touched upon it when we discussed the twin part, is, it's not just one company, but just how the ecosystem can come together for enabling a better sustainable future. So in your mind, how do you imagine the partnerships evolving in the short and medium term as we try to achieve some of these steep sustainability goals for ourselves?
Well, from my point of view, if I look at it, the whole topic of software ecosystem will play a much bigger role. If you look at it, I mean, today our main business is in any case selling medical devices for diagnosis like CT scanner or also laboratory diagnostics equipment. So this is, let's say, one of our core businesses. In the future, when we talk about a digital twin of an individual, then we talk about digitalization. And digitalization, artificial intelligence, data, AI, and software, I mean, this is about technologies where you require a different ecosystem and where you need to be in a position to model and simulate. And this is something where we are getting into more and more and more. So the focus, I mean, for sustainability, what Knut, for example, mentioned before about recycling, about the material, that all, of course, applies. But when we look in the future of MedTech, and from my point of view, the future of MedTech in principle are digital twins who could also serve as wellness coach, predicting the individual risks and preventing sickness. Yeah. So if you can model in principle a complete individual, then you can also simulate it. And if you can simulate, then you can simply run a simulation and can say, okay, dear person, if you don't change your food habits or drinking habits or sports exercises, you may develop a disease in 5 years. And this is an answer by simulation, which you can get, let's say, in minutes through the simulation. But as I said before, all of this will be based to a large extent on software, which also will have the respective impact that the ecosystems will expand to such kind of technologies like artificial intelligence, like data science, and like software development per se.
Got it. Makes sense. Good. But Shoshan, I think we had an interesting discussion in the previous section regarding how if the things are getting complex from a material standpoint and an electronic standpoint as well. Now, when we look at the future of MedTech, one of the interesting observations that most engineers or most companies try to deal with from a compromise perspective is they have spent years in trying to perfect certain devices, right? It's very complex. There's so much regulation involved. They've spent years doing that. And here comes sustainability, and we are supposed to change a lot of things, right? In the actual product, in the bill of material, in how we are doing the process. So, in your mind, how do you think this both of them can really coexist? Do we just need like completely new products, or how is this going to evolve, Shoshan?
Very, very, very interesting question. I think your question represents many people's questions, right? Many people still have this idea that making a product more sustainable means, or almost means, to make it with materials that are more expensive and with lower quality. But that's not the case anymore when we look at sustainability holistically. So to answer your question, I think performance, usability, and safety are important, and they will remain to be important. And the evolving trend of sustainability is not going to compromise them. From both environmental and social aspect, sustainability supports performance, supports performance, usability, and safety. So from the social aspect, we must ensure the safety of our users. That's the human rights to have access to healthcare and live healthy. We don't want to, put a problem to people who are already suffering from some issues. So the product that we provide must work and keep them safe and bring them to a healthier status. From the environmental perspective, right? And we must improve the performance of the device. From the circular economy perspective, we need to continue to improve the performance of the device to ensure that it is durable and hence reduce the waste and consumption of natural resources to make new ones. So the trend is telling us that we are moving in the same direction. Sustainability is not the enemy to bring down all the good work that our R&D colleagues have been doing. But of course, there are some considerations that we need to explore. There are many dilemmas we need to explore. For example, during one of our workshop with our R&D colleagues on the topic of circular economy, we talked about design the product for repairment. Because in the circular economy principle, if you can repair a product, of course you can prolong the lifetime of the product. But for a hearing aid, it is quite small, and it touches, it sits in your ear for a long time, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. If we make the hearing aids easy for repairment, then it means that we will leave the shell easy to open. And then easily the sweat and dust will go into the hearing aid and hence deteriorate the internal part, the electronics inside the hearing aids much, much quicker. And hence make the lifetime of the hearing aids actually shorter, not longer. So these are the dilemmas that we are discussing. Yes, we have these sustainability principles, circular economy principles, but we need to apply it in a smart way so that from the life cycle perspective, we are making positive improvements, not just focus on one small area here and then forget about the whole lifetime.
Perfect. Thank you, Shoshan. That was very interesting. Very difficult question, but I think you made us really understand it well. Knut, coming to you, and we discussed the topic of partnerships a little bit with GERD, but one of the things that we wanted to understand is, firstly, I'm sure that the partnerships are the companies you work with. You're expecting a lot more from them from a sustainable perspective. And at the same time, in your In your experience, what has been the response from these ecosystem players as you push yourself and the entire community towards being more sustainable? Are there certain portions of the value chain that are responding better, and there are certain others who may be still dealing with some inertia? And how do you see this evolving in the future?
Oh, again, an exciting question. Yeah, I think you can take it from different angles, and I have to come from a little bit more distance and come closer than to the answer. Well, you can come from one angle to change the things. You have what you can measure starts to matter. So whatever you do and show the impact and motivate people, you should be able to really measure it and show it. So when you have, as I started with the material, the pieces you get to show what is the ecological footprint, huh? What is the material in use, and is there Teflon in it, and so on and so forth? Is it steel? What is CO2 emissions? So there we are absolutely not today. So okay. Because when we see the regulations here globally, they are completely fragmented. And to make those things comparable, when you measure, to make them comparable is a challenge for us. And we are on the journey. And when we say you see the certain CO2 footprints is a very good example. Again, they are different references to measure it and explain it, what it is. So there it starts. And the other hand, also the customers playing a very important role here. Of course, we can innovate and motivate, but when we have to show what is the real change in really ecologic footprint, when we offer a product. And then there is in hospitals, for example, there is a history of now some smart hospital. Now we talk about green hospital. This is a very good evolution because this is in the context of data. You need data to be able to show the ecologic change and the benefit and efficiency you increase in the hospital to show your impact of your measures you take to be more sustainable. So, and when they have these measures and the motivation, and even some regulations on top of it from the governments, from the European Union or whatever, FDA domain, US or whatever, then you get a pull. And this would be very helpful. And the society helps also with their new thinking, sustainable. Everyone knows we are on a track and in a trap we have to be sustainable. And we have to give the people the tool in their hands to be able to measure it. Again, you can live with arguments, you can make commercials, but at the end, you have to be able to compare. Is this really a step forward? Is this what I do now very comparable to that what I did? And is it more sustainable? And there's a challenge. There's definitely a challenge in the whole chain. And I think the suppliers, depends who you take, they work on this, but we are by far not there.
Interesting, Knut. I think this in itself is a topic for further deliberation, and maybe we will definitely take it up at some time on how can one even develop the supply chain into this area. Thank you for that honest feedback, Knut. David, I would come to you, and again, one of the questions we would like to understand is, yes, everybody talks about sustainability. There are a lot of use cases and good examples, but at the same time, I'm sure from a practitioner perspective at your level, there would be certain areas that you very clearly see which are not getting the kind of investment that might be needed for them to be made more sustainable, or areas where you think that given investment, the sustainability objective can be met much faster or could be gain a lot more traction. So with that in mind, do you want to just walk us through what those areas are, or which areas could get more attention, if not just dollars?
Sure. It's a very, very broad and tough question to answer because we all agree and we all know that MedTech is far behind than, let's say, their counterpart in life sciences pharma in lines of digital transformation, right? So all MedTech companies are not there yet as they would want to be today. So this is a generalization that I'm doing. But there is a huge scope, first of all, in the investments to do is bringing new innovation around recycle and reuse of medical device products. Especially, there is a conflict in one of the use cases, which is any sterile product, right, cannot be reused. So that's a huge conflict there. However, we can find ways through new innovations. Maybe there is a possibility that we can find products that can be recycled or even reused. So that's one of the huge areas that can be invested into. Another area is very close to me. I'm going to talk about the digital side of things in, let's say, software as a medical device. Data interoperability is going to be the key for future. Why am I saying this is simply COVID-19 pandemic has made it evident that enabling ecosystem players and end users alike is key in generating new value systems. And we have seen the results of these, and we have seen a lot of let's say disruptive young companies have done very well in the markets in this slide. So I wouldn't be surprised to see in next decade all MedTech companies providing data interoperability as a basic value, and that's one of the areas I would really put my bet on. And this would actually lead to a bigger conversation talking about building ecosystems within a known, or let's say a homegrown ecosystem, or an ecosystem that is open and that can integrate to any other solution that's available in the market, right? So if you just go back a few years into any other industry, they were very siloed. They were working within their own, including Microsoft, for example, right? So they were only working within their ecosystem. They were only doing the things, but they had to open up their arms, and they had to open up to cloud. They had to open up their systems so that they can work with other solutions or other key providers that are in the market for different purposes, but they can leverage the infrastructure that Microsoft is providing, for example, to harness the likes of AI or machine learning, which are the next big things that MedTech will start leveraging on as well, whether it's Microsoft or AWS or whatever it is, but they all provide the infrastructure, and all the MedTech companies will be looking forward to adapt to these technologies instead of having them homegrown, and instead of having them, let's say, how do you call them? Like keep them in their own, let's say, branding, but they will be looking at partnerships, and these partnerships will become more and more important in future, and we would be seeing this in coming years.
Okay, great. I think that was a brilliant point you made in terms of how making yourself more open will lead it to become a lot more sustainable. So that's very interesting, David. And maybe building on that, Ali, in terms of how David mentioned about partnerships with, say, Microsoft and other players in the ecosystem. So in your experience, Ali, again, from being a tech provider, being working on payments and different portions of the value chain in MedTech, are there any specific forms of partnerships that you believe will become inevitable in the future? Things that at least in the medical space people have not taken seriously as of now.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing. So we've changed our motto, which statement to pay with care pay for care with care. So I think the whole community type partnerships have never been looked into. So like, for example, has healthcare ever looked into partnerships with military and things like that? Because there are Department of Defense and DRDO programs that are sustainable, that can be done in a better way, and in order to actually also help the military to do something like that. So I know it's a very early stage thing that we're doing from a zealous standpoint, but there are partnerships out there that be community partnerships, non-traditional partnerships like some of the defense aspects of it that have never been looked into before. But again, I think not just sustainability, but as I said, the war now, obviously, regardless of, it's such a connected world. COVID impacted everybody. Economy is impacting everybody. War is impacting everybody. Supply chain is impacting everybody. So now it has become a very connected world where the partnerships that were not, looked at in the past have to be looked at, like a military partnership, like a, even during the COVID times, how obviously now Ukraine is doing it, but even in the United States, factories were asked to rebuild stuff for the use of, for COVID, for the use of, those. So we have to be prepared for, retooling our factories to, in another world, maybe masks in a sustainable way, or like recycling the material in a certain way. So I do believe that there are opportunities out there, and we are doing some in a very nascent way right now. But I think all of this will pick up, and those are the very non-traditional aspects of it in terms of outreaching to the community, doing community work. So we are actually, our leadership team is actually doing a community event, which is preparing care packages for the military and things like that. From a repeatability, and sustainability standpoint.
Interesting. Thank you, Kali. That was a very interesting answer. Something that I didn't really expect, but very poignant. Raj, I would like to end this section with coming to you and discussing what kind of solutions or platforms that L&TTS has deployed to enable digitally driven, sustainable healthcare solutions for your customers.
Sure. See, look, I think somebody touched upon the fact that after the pandemic, the focus on sustainability has really gone up, right? I think that is true. I mean, on multiple levels, I think from a climate action perspective, we thought with all the airlines grounded and no traffic in the roads, it was good for the planet. But in reality, from 51 billion tons, it only came down to 48 billion, right? So it was sort of a eye-opener, a call to action for an affirmative action. And along with it, the pandemic also exposed how underprivileged were some communities across the world when it comes to affordable healthcare and access to medical devices and proper care, to be frank. So I think, as Xiaojun mentioned, the sustainability is core to every corporate strategy. I mean, there's no two different things. Sustainability has to be the way that companies would make money now. So what we see across several of our customers when we look at it is, of course, digitalization, looking at their products across, converting into biodegradable products, alternate packaging, increasing reusability. For example, a surgical stapler for emerging countries. So we work with them in looking at the product development, the BOM, and looking at the product circularity and helping them, design these products better. But then looking at the digital side of things, there are several solutions that we have helped build for our customers. Like one of the large medical devices manufacturer in Europe, we have developed a remote patient monitoring platform itself. It sort of aggregates data from different devices, deriving insights and enabling collaboration across different parties involved in the care delivery, if you will, right? We have also developed our own solutions, which we sort of use the knowledge to help some of our customers plus license out. For example, ChestRI is an AI-based solution to analyze chest X-rays for detecting various pulmonary and thoracic diseases, if you will. Another one, it's a sepsis analyzer, which sort of can predict a development of a sepsis condition in a patient, well in advance, so that, the physicians can make the right interventions. So a couple of examples, I can go on, but in the interest of time, I think that it gives you a good idea of the plethora of, exciting projects that we are on to.
Great. Thank you, Raj. Thank you. And I see I have about 12 minutes left and about 2 sections to go. So what I'll do is I will be, I will kind of force myself into a hard situation and take only maybe one panelist for the 2-3 questions that I have remaining. Maybe what I'll do is I will go to Gerd, primarily because, the question is in terms of, engineering with sustainable materials and techniques. So, good. Just if you could answer in brief, what according to you would be the primary focus areas from when you look at engineering MedTech devices, right? It could be material, the design, we spoke about it. It could be disposal. What would be the top 2-3 areas, good?
Well, I mean, what also my co-panelists mentioned before, no-brainers are the whole topics of materials and packaging disposal. What has to come in addition is what I also mentioned before, is the whole topic of modeling, so that you have a digital twin of the manufacturing process of the device itself, to ensure that you have an optimized production process, but also to ensure that you have the optimized product when it comes to manufacturing per se.
Perfect. Good. Shaushan, I think there was a question that you wanted to be directed, and I can understand why. So I'll get this question directly to you. So there are, just as in the mobile world or consumer electronic world, some of the device manufacturers are giving options to consumers to say that, hey, if your product is spoiled or is completed its life, please do not dispose it elsewhere. We will incentivize you to send it back to us, etc. Do you think this is manageable in the long term, considering there is a significant supply chain investment that is needed to do this, or some kind of partnership that you need to develop? Or is it something that the company is doing itself, or there are players who are helping the company evolve with this kind of almost circular aspect of the device that you kind of alluded to previously?
At least from the hearing aids industry, I believe this is not only a feasible solution, but it should be the new norm. At the end of the day, who else but the manufacturer of the device knows better about the device, and who knows better how to reuse it, refurbish it, repair it, and remanufacture it. So despite the logistic part, that needs to be handled smartly. We don't want to ship around things around the globe, but taking back the device by the manufacturer and make reuse of it in one way or another is in the long run the solution. But when we talk about recycling, that's another story, because recycling does not require the knowledge of the device itself. That should be done locally to avoid any footprint from transportation. But what we see right now is that there's not sufficient of proper recycling facilities around the globe. Just one very simple example. We have a manufacturing site in Philippines, and we have to move the e-waste from Philippines to Singapore in order for us to efficiently recycle the e-waste. So it's a lot of effort, because it's waste. So there's a lot of paperwork needs to be handled. A lot of
carbon footprint in all the transportation, is it?
Not really carbon footprint, because the device is small, so the quantity of waste is also very low. But the administrative burden on the company is very high, because it's waste. You can't just send it to another country. You have to go through a lot of paperwork. So that's something as a whole world we need to fix, right? We need local recycling facility of a high efficiency to handle these wastes locally.
Interesting. Thank you so much for that, Shaurya. I think we are discovering key weakness areas that maybe are easier to address. And sticking with that kind of theme, Kunut, I will come to you with my next, or maybe the penultimate section, or last section that I have. And we discussed some of these smaller things, right? And we spoke about big technology interventions or huge material changes that will make it sustainable. But I'm sure there are certain smart things that we can do in terms of designing a product, or there are small things that we can do which will create bigger impact. It could be in emissions, it could be in water use, energy use, like what Kali told about reducing compute power. But what are some of the top 2-3 areas, that you think are these low-hanging fruit when it comes to making products and services more sustainable in the MedTech world?
Okay, certainly. Thank you very much for my other colleagues here, the speakers. They mentioned a lot of it. So first of all, the brainers, no-brainers. This is the packaging and shipment and so on. Overall, I would say as local as possible, as global as needed is maybe one subject. This means then and everything starts with the customer need, innovation to maybe outfigure new needs that he's not aware of. And this means in the design process, you make design it to service, design to repair, you make it durable, you decide how long it survives, you make the selection of the material. There the story starts, and it has to serve, of course, the customer needs. So the top thing is for me definitely the concept of the product in combination of really calculating the complete ecologic footprint. And this means many more things than CO2 emission.
Interesting. Kali, do you want to take a shot at the same question in terms of interesting areas that will contribute to sustainability and not just high tech investment or high investment areas?
Yeah, I mean, I think drones, 5G, the way we talked about blockchain already, all of those are, I mean, if you think about even, what's happening in India from a drone delivery standpoint, the Apollo has already finished the first pilot in terms of delivering medication to rural areas and things like that. I mean, those are all technological advances that are going to be, hugely sustainable. And repeatable and safe and secure and all of that stuff. And as connectivity grows, 5G is going to change if 5G, I mean, if you think about 5G becoming ubiquitous in the world, and the edge devices, these compute devices are getting higher, more powerful, then obviously you're going to bring in much more power from a technology standpoint to enable, not only just a sheer technological advances, but sustainability along with it. So all of those, I would say, are the keys to sustainability in the future.
Excellent, Kali. Always can bank on you to give some interesting ideas. Thank you for that. David, I will come to you on an interesting question, right? And it's one thing for us to come out with sustainable products and devices. It's the other thing in terms of trying to get how do I put it? Get acceptance for it in the community, and number two, even get it accepted from a regulatory standpoint. So, are there any such friction areas that you witnessed, or areas that you think the overall bodies need to evolve, or the customer preferences need to evolve in making things more sustainable?
Definitely, there is still a huge need, I would say, because these factors that you're pointing to, safety, usability, right? So that's on one end of the continuum. On the other end, you're looking at reliability or sustainability of these products, right? So they are on both sides of the continuum, and on top of this, you're looking at pricing pressures, which I need to bring it in as well, because
especially in an inflationary environment that we are in right now.
It keeps shrinking. And a high quality product is expected at a lower price with all the claims that are available, and it has to be sustainable and all of these things. But given this on one end of the continuum, and on the other end, you're looking at manufacturing efficiencies of the companies, what's the time that it takes to produce and bring it to the market, safety, regulatory compliance, of course, all of these things that you're looking at a life cycle analysis, and you're trying to compress all of these things to get it delivered as efficiently opportunity as possible. This is only possible when you have better partnerships on one side, and there is a stronger need in transparency of reimbursement policies, which I believe the government has to come up with, and this is where we see a stronger stakeholder involvement is needed. For example, hospitals should have their say. Even the patient should have their say, because at the end of the day, enabling the patient access to care is the core of it. And if we expect to provide the best quality with all of these compliance that we need to do, I think there needs to be a stronger support and rewarding for innovation that is linked to sustainability. And if we can get these rewards, we can definitely create seamless care.
Excellent, David. I think we touched upon some important points. And Raj, I will like to end the session with this question for you, and kind of build it on what David also just mentioned in terms of the end customer having a say or even a voice in terms of demanding sustainable products or incentivizing those kind of areas, right? So how do you, Raj, expect the overall industrial offerings to evolve, given that customer preference also is an important way to achieve this?
I think, it even beyond customer preference, I would say that today the investors and employees also have that same expectation from brands, right? They expect their employer or the companies that they're investing in to take a stance and support a cause. So that's why I think sustainability has become mainstream, and it's also a way of doing profitable business, right? So, for example, you see a lot of customers looking at developing low-cost medical devices for developing countries, if you will, right? And sort of switching into a high-volume pricing model to expand and provide access to tests, products like pharmaceuticals or vaccines and supplements across let's say subcontinent of Africa or developing nations like India and so on and so forth, where there is a volume play. So even though you are shortening the time to market and maybe compromising a little bit on the quality, as somebody touched upon, there is enough money that you can make from the volumes, if you will, right? So I think the industry will move towards those localized products as and where it is needed, is in my view. And the more and more digital technologies that you put in place, the digital twin, the digital thread that we spoke about, and the model of one, and so on and so forth, that will really enable companies to profitably manufacture different, for a lack of a better word, classes of devices, which sort of caters to these diverse needs of the world population, in fact.
Makes sense. Great. I think we are at the end of time, and in respect to each of your commitments post this session, I can really continue more. This is such a brilliant panel with such great insights. But I would just have to conclude this year with a big thank you from us and from our sponsors. Thank you so much for spending your time and almost educating us and the audience on sustainable future of medical devices. Thank you so much for this. We will definitely send out a note to you in terms of the minutes of the session, and also reach out to you, like we mentioned, in terms of our further steps in trying to collate some of these insights into either a document or how best we can share this with some of the people who really want to understand things around this area. Thank you so much. Have a great day and also a great weekend.